My name is Sean. I'm 34, live just outside Sacramento, and until last month, I thought I had a decent relationship with my family. Not perfect, but decent. My mom and I used to talk at least once a week. My younger brother, Nate, 22 and fresh out of college, was the golden child, and I don't say that bitterly. It was just a fact, like how some kids are allergic to peanuts. Nate got praised for breathing. I got silence when I landed my first six-figure client. And my dad? He passed away when I was 20. So yeah, it's mostly been just the three of us, Mom, Nate, and me, for the last 14 years. At least, that's how it looked on the surface. Here's the part one haven't told anyone outside my close circle. I paid off my mom's mortgage. The entire thing. $680,000, paid over the course of 5 years. I didn't do it all at once. I just sent her money regularly and handled the payments quietly. I was doing well with my consulting business, and after a particularly great year, I thought, why not take that burden off her shoulders? She had supported me in small but meaningful ways when I was starting out, so it felt right at the time. She never explicitly asked me for help, but she also never declined it. She knew I was making the payments. We had a few conversations about it early on. You really don't have to do this, she'd say, but always with that look, half proud, half relieved. Eventually, she stopped pretending to protest. After a while, it became routine. I'd cover the mortgage, and she'd handle the groceries or take Nate on vacation. I didn't mind. It wasn't about recognition. At least, not then. Nate, on the other hand, barely noticed. He thought Mom had landed some miracle refinance, or won a scratcher, or had a sugar daddy. I'm not joking. He literally made that joke once during Thanksgiving dinner, and Mom just laughed it off. I remember staring at my plate, half hoping she'd say, actually, Sean's been covering it. But no. Silence. My name never came up. I let it go. I told myself I wasn't doing it for thanks. But you can only shove that down for so long. Nate was always the kind of guy who coasted. Barely passed high school, flunked out of his first college, spent 2 years finding himself in Europe, on Mom's dime, of course, and finally limped his way through an online business degree. When he walked across that graduation stage last month, you'd think he'd discovered a cure for cancer with the way my mom was beaming. I went to the ceremony. I cheered, clapped, even brought a gift, an engraved Mont Blanc pen. I thought it was symbolic. Welcome to adulthood. Now go write your own story. Cheesy maybe, but it came from a good place. Nate barely looked at it, said, cool, and tossed it on the passenger seat of his Mustang, the one Mom helped him lease. I should have seen the signs that something was off, but I was too tired to connect the dots. And then, a week later, I got the call. Sean, I wanted to tell you something before the party, Mom said. Her voice had that overly sweet tone she used when she knew she was about to say something crazy. We've decided to gift Nate the house. As a graduation present. I was quiet for a few seconds. I remember just blinking, like the words hadn't registered. What house? I finally asked, even though I knew. I needed her to say it. This house. My house. Well, you know, the family house. I paused. The one I paid off. She laughed nervously. Well, technically, it was in my name. And you know, family is family. You've got your business, your apartment. Nate's just starting out. There was this hum in my ears. Like static. I wasn't even angry at first. I was stunned. You're giving him the house. The one I've paid the mortgage on since 2018. Oh, sweetie, don't make it about money. It is money, $680,000 of it. You think I was just doing that for fun? I thought you were doing it for family, she snapped. Then softer, look, this isn't about you. It's about setting your brother up for success. I wish I could say I handled it gracefully, that I took a deep breath and calmly hung up. But I didn't. I laughed. Not a ha-ha funny laugh. More of a broken, you've got to be kidding me laugh. Then I said, so I'm guessing I'm not invited to the party either? There was a pause. Then she said, well, Nate feels like your energy might bring down the celebration. You know how he is. He wants it to be positive. I didn't say another word. I hung up. That night, I sat on my couch with a glass of whiskey, the Mont Blanc pen lying on the table in front of me, and I thought about every single time I'd swallowed a slight. Every time Nate got a pat on the back for something I did better. Every time my mom conveniently forgot the truth of who kept her afloat. But here's the thing. I wasn't alone. My uncle, Dad's brother, called me 2 days later. He said, you heard? I said, yep. He said, you coming? I paused. To what? The party. Apparently, I'm not welcome. There was a beat of silence. Then he said, well, I'm going. But I'm bringing something they're not expecting. And that's when the gears started turning. 3 days later, I showed up anyway. Dressed sharp, calm, quiet. I walked into the backyard right as Nate was raising a champagne glass and Mom was bragging about her baby boy. That's when Nate looked at me like I was a stain on his graduation robe and said, didn't think you'd show. This is kind of a family thing. And I just smiled, turned to my uncle, standing beside me, and asked, you want to tell them, or should I? He went pale. Mom blinked. What's going on? And that was just step one. There's a certain silence that falls over a crowd when something's not quite right. That moment in the backyard was exactly that kind of silence. All the aunts and uncles, family friends, neighbors, they all looked from me to my uncle to Nate and back again like they'd just walked in halfway through a scene in a movie and missed the part where everything changed. Nate's grip on his champagne glass tightened just a bit. Tell us what? He asked, smirking like he thought he was still the star of the show. That you're mad because I got the house. Get over it, dude. Mom shot me the same tight smile she always used when she was trying to control the narrative. Sean, this really isn't the time. That was when Uncle Dave cleared his throat. Now, let me give you some context. Uncle Dave is my dad's older brother. He's always been the quiet one at family gatherings, more of a watcher than a talker. But he's also the executor of my dad's estate. And unbeknownst to just about everyone in that backyard besides me and my lawyer, he's also the one who helped me buy that house years ago through a family trust. He looked around, voice calm but deliberate. Actually, I think it is the time. Nate rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck in the back of his head. God, are you guys seriously going to do this now? This is my party. I could practically feel the temperature drop. Uncle Dave turned to my mom. Linda, do you remember when James died? My mom blinked, thrown off. Of course I do. And do you remember the house? The mortgage? How you said you couldn't keep up with the payments? She hesitated. That was a long time ago. You told Sean he didn't have to help. But he did. And after 3 years of helping, he and I came to an agreement. We bought out the mortgage through the trust his father left behind. Quietly, legally. I watched as Mom's expression froze. Eyes narrowing, jaw clenching, lips twitching like she was trying to stay in control of the room. Nate was the first to speak. What the hell does that mean? I looked him in the eye. It means the house isn't hers to give away. He snorted. Oh, come on. She's lived here for what, 30 years? She raised us here. You think you're just gonna what, kick her out now? I took a deep breath. No, that was never the plan. I just wanted her to be safe. I didn't care about owning it. But gifting it to you, behind my back, after everything I did? That's not happening. My mom's voice rose, trembling with fury. How dare you bring this up here? In front of everyone? You're embarrassing yourself. No, Mom, I said. You did that when you tried to pretend I didn't matter. The silence now was thick. The kind of silence that crushes parties and ends photo ops. People were slowly stepping away, pretending to check their phones or refill drinks, giving the family just enough space to implode in peace. I didn't stay long after that. Just long enough to see the look on Nate's face when it sunk in. Just long enough to hear my mom mutter something under her breath about betrayal. I left with Uncle Dave, got in his car, and didn't say a word until we were halfway down the street. He finally spoke first. You sure you're ready for this? I looked out the window. I was ready 5 years ago. I just didn't know it yet. But here's the thing about people like my mother and Nate. When you block their move, they don't retreat. They regroup. And they retaliate. The next morning, I got a text from Nate. Hope you're happy. Mom's been crying all night. You ruined the best day of my life. An hour later, I saw a Facebook post from my mother. Something vague and manipulative, like some people don't understand sacrifice, especially when they've never made any themselves. Tag Nate. Photo of them hugging, with the caption, "True family always has your back." Comments flooded in. Ignore the haters. Your son deserves that house, Linda. You're such a strong mom. I didn't comment. I didn't message. I just screenshotted it all. By noon, my cousin Jen, who I hadn't seen in years, messaged me privately. Hey, is this about the house? I don't mean to be nosy, but you're the one who paid it off, right? I replied with a simple, yeah. She said, that's so messed up. It was. But it was also just the beginning. 2 days later, I got a call from the property management company that handles some of my rentals. They were confused. Apparently, someone claiming to be me had called to ask for all of my tenant contact info. Said it was for emergency ownership restructuring. Luckily, the company knows me too well to fall for that. But it told me something important. Nate was panicking. That's when I realized he wasn't just angry. He was scared. Scared the house was never going to be his. Scared I'd expose how dependent he really was. Scared Mom wouldn't be able to clean it all up for him this time. And honestly, I hadn't even done anything yet. But he pushed me further. That Friday, I went to visit the house. My house. Just to clear the air, check the property, maybe talk to Mom in person. But when I got there, something was off. The locks had been changed. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. Eventually, Nate opened the door, smug as ever. Hey bro, you're not really welcome here right now. I stared at him. You changed the locks? He shrugged. I live here now. Mom said it's my house. You can't just show up uninvited. Uninvited? It's my name on the deed. Then take it up with a lawyer, he said, and slammed the door in my face. I stood there, stunned, for what felt like an hour. But it was maybe 2 minutes. Then I walked back to my car, sat inside, and just stared at the dashboard. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was war. They had no idea what I was capable of. No idea how many receipts I'd kept. No idea that the house, my house, was just the beginning. Because for years, I'd been quiet, generous, patient. I kept the peace. But that ended the moment they changed the locks. That weekend, I sat down and opened a folder on my desktop titled Family Documents. Inside were PDFs, contracts, scanned emails, bank statements, and letters from Uncle Dave's office. Every time I helped with a payment. Every time I covered taxes. Every time Mom said, just this once. And I said, sure. I organized everything. Timeline, ownership records, statements. And I called my lawyer. But before I took any official steps, I had one more card to play. Because Nate's graduation party? That wasn't the big event. Not really. The big one was coming the following weekend. A huge extended family barbecue, annual tradition. Dad's side and Mom's side. The kind where people fly in, bring dishes, make speeches. The one where Nate was supposed to announce that he'd be moving into the house and taking over as the new man of the family. Yeah, that one. And I had no intention of missing it. Because when I said, that was just step one, I meant it. The Monday after Nate slammed the door in my face, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I took a sick day, not from a 9-to-5. I run my own consulting business, but from life. From being the responsible one, the fixer, the quiet provider who made things happen behind the scenes. I turned off my phone, pulled the curtains in my apartment, and sat on the floor in a hoodie with a mug of black coffee growing cold beside me. No podcasts, no meetings, no deadlines. Just me. And the reality that I had been erased by the people I loved most. I don't know how long I sat there, honestly. Maybe hours. Maybe all day. At some point, I opened the group family chat, mostly dead since the party, and scrolled. Every message from Mom now felt like it had a double edge. All those love you texts, the ones where she asked how my business was going, or if I could check the pipes next time you're over, or help Nate update his resume. I started seeing the pattern I'd been too blind to see before. I was never the son. I was the lifeline, the safety net, the backup plan. And now that Nate had graduated and could take over, I was disposable. That night, I got drunk. Not dangerously so, but enough to feel it. I stared at the ceiling in bed and asked myself, what if I just let them have it? The house, the story, the lie. But something deep in me said no. Not because of pride, not even because of the money, but because for the first time, I saw it. The manipulation, the years of quiet sidelining, the emotional rope Mom kept tied around me, just long enough to pull when she needed. I wasn't going to play that role anymore. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Jameson, I said, voice hoarse. I need to file an injunction on the property. I want to freeze any transfers, usage rights, anything. And I want to be present for the family barbecue this weekend. He paused. Sean, are you sure you want to mix legal action with family drama? That's a cocktail that never goes down smooth. I'm not mixing anything. I'm just making sure they don't get to write the ending to this story before I do. The next few days were a strange blur of grief and purpose. I was mourning something I didn't even know I'd lost. Years of being the overlooked son, the one who was only appreciated when he made other people's lives easier. But I was also planning. I started with the simple things. Cleared my schedule, told my clients I'd be taking a short sabbatical, reorganized my office, cleaned out my fridge. Not because I suddenly wanted to live cleaner, but because chaos outside makes order inside feel like an anchor. Then I went through my documents again. I found emails from my mom that flat out said things like, "I'm sorry again for leaning on you so much financially. You've basically been the co-owner of this house for years." I found messages from Uncle Dave confirming transfer of deed authority. I even found the scanned copy of the trust paperwork, showing clearly that the property had been moved into the family trust under my name as primary beneficiary. They had nothing, except noise. And noise only works when the other person is too scared to speak up. By Thursday, I was back to hitting the gym in the mornings. I hadn't touched a treadmill in months, but somehow the rhythm of it, the sound of my feet hitting the belt, the steady heartbeat in my ears, felt like therapy. I started cooking again, too. Real meals. Not microwave dinners or whatever app delivered the fastest. Something about cutting onions, simmering sauces, plating food, it grounded me. On Friday, I met with Uncle Dave for coffee. He looked exhausted. "I'm getting calls every day," he said, stirring his espresso. "Your mom's trying to guilt me. Nate called me a snake. They think I sided with you." "You told them the truth," I said. He nodded. "It doesn't matter. They don't want the truth. They want the version where you're the villain." I looked out the window at the cafe patio, people sipping lattes in the autumn sun, completely oblivious to the storm I was about to walk into. "Let them," I said. "They've already written me out of the story. I'm just editing the last chapter." Uncle Dave reached into his folder and handed me a copy of the updated deed. My name. Clear as day. "This'll shut it down if they try anything. But you still sure about showing up Sunday?" I looked at the paper for a long moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm not hiding anymore." The morning of the barbecue, I woke up early. Not because I was anxious, though I was, but because I couldn't sleep. I made a cup of coffee, put on the suit I saved for weddings and client pitches, and practiced my smile in the mirror. Not a smug one. Not cold. Just calm. I didn't want to look like a man out for revenge. I wanted to look like a man who had finally stepped into his own story. I pulled up to the park where the event was held every year. Same spot, near the lake, with folding chairs and a rented tent, and those tacky plastic tablecloths my mom insisted on bringing because it makes everything look more festive. I parked 2 rows away, grabbed the folder from my passenger seat, and walked in. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Nate was near the grill, holding court with a bunch of cousins, wearing aviators and a smug grin that dropped the second he saw me. Mom was under the tent, chatting with Aunt Grace, who immediately whispered something in her ear the moment I came into view. "Sean," Mom said, voice pinched. "You decided to come after all." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "I brought some paperwork I thought you might find interesting." Nate barked out a laugh. "Seriously? Are you going to make a scene again?" "No scene," I said. "Just some clarity." I stepped up to the main table, the one with the "Congrats, Nate" banner flapping above it, and set the folder down. I opened it slowly. Let them all see. These are the trust documents. The payment history. The deed. Every single time I covered your mortgage. Every dollar I poured into the house you said you were gifting to Nate. The silence was immediate and total. Like the moment before a thunderclap. I didn't look at Mom. Not yet. I looked at Nate. "You can throw parties. You can change locks. You can post whatever you want on Facebook. But this," I tapped the paper, "isn't opinion. It's ownership." He opened his mouth, but I wasn't done. For 5 years, I kept this family afloat. Quietly. I never asked for praise. I never asked for payback. But I'm done being erased. Then I turned to Mom. And finally, she looked shaken. "Sean," she said, barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" I met her eyes. "Because you already did." That's where I left it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just let the truth sit there, uncomfortable and undeniable. Then I turned and walked away, leaving the folder behind. As I reached my car, I heard voices rising behind me, shocked cousins, uncomfortable questions, people asking Nate what the hell was going on. But I didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight. That evening, I turned off my phone again. No texts, no calls, just me, a good dinner, and a Netflix show I didn't even really pay attention to. And sometime around midnight, I did something I hadn't done in years. I slept. Deeply. No anxiety dreams. No tightness in my chest. No wondering if I was good enough, or loyal enough, or family enough. Just sleep. Because rock bottom isn't always crashing into the ground. Sometimes, it's standing still while the people you love try to bury you under the weight of their expectations. And the rise? It doesn't come with fanfare. It starts with quiet. With choosing yourself. And I had just started. But Nate? Nate still thought this was over. He had no idea what was coming next. I used to think revenge was loud. The shouting. The dramatic reveals. The slamming of doors and raised voices in echoing rooms. But now I knew better. Real revenge, the kind that rattles people to their bones, is quiet. Precise. Surgical. It doesn't announce itself. It waits. It watches. And when the time is right, it pulls one thread, and the whole illusion collapses. That barbecue had been the first pull of the thread. And even though I walked away from the party with a cool head and a full night's sleep, I wasn't done. Not even close. If anything, I was just warming up. Because Nate had made a critical mistake, and he didn't even realize it. He brought war to my doorstep. But he was playing checkers, and I'd been building a chessboard for years. The Monday after the barbecue, I scheduled a full day for what I called strategic realignment. I started with Uncle Dave. We met again at the same cafe, though this time he looked more alert, curious, even. You stirred up a hornet's nest, he said, sipping a black coffee. Nate called me 4 times yesterday. Your mom left me a voicemail sobbing. What's next? I slid a folder across the table. Inside was a printout of every documented payment I'd made toward the house, including property taxes, repairs, utility bills during the months she was behind, and even the remodeling work I'd quietly financed last year when Mom couldn't afford to update the kitchen but wanted it nice for Nate's friends. Dave's eyes scanned the documents. He whistled under his breath. You kept all of this? Every cent, I said. They want to treat me like I'm replaceable. Like I don't matter. But they're sitting on a house I've already paid for, twice over. He glanced up. You thinking of selling? I shook my head. Not yet. But I want the paperwork airtight. I want it locked down. No asset transfers. No emergency changes. No squatters' claims. I want them to know they're on borrowed time. Borrowed, he asked. I smiled. Interest-bearing. He chuckled but nodded. All right. I'll prep the documentation. What about Nate? That was the next step. I didn't just want Nate out of the house. I wanted him to understand why. To feel the slow unraveling. Not because I'm cruel, but because I'd spent a decade holding this family up, and I was done letting that go unseen. So I started digging. Not illegally, just smart. Remember how I said I run a consulting business? I have clients in everything from finance to logistics to HR tech, which means I've picked up a few very handy tools and contacts along the way. It didn't take much effort to figure out that Nate, for all his arrogance, had been embellishing his resume during job interviews. I found an old copy of his actual transcript in my mom's email. We shared a family iCloud account for a while. She never changed the password. And guess what? He hadn't graduated with honors. Not even close. Barely a 2.1 GPA. One call to a buddy in HR consulting, and I found out he'd applied to 3 companies using a 3.8 GPA and Dean's List 3 semesters. Flat out lies. I didn't report him yet. That would have been too easy. Instead, I made a copy of everything. Screenshots. PDF exports. A quiet little file I named insurance. Then I turned to the utilities. See, the house was still technically in the trust, even if Mom and Nate had changed the locks. And the trust still listed me as managing partner. That meant I had every right to request billing histories, service plans, and, in this case, initiate a routine ownership audit. I submitted the form. Within 3 days, I had emails from the electric and water companies letting me know that service under Nate's name hadn't been properly validated. And until ownership could be confirmed, bills would be paused, or worse, backcharged to the trust. Let's just say the lights started flickering not long after. I didn't stop there. I knew that Nate's car, the one Mom helped him lease, was under a co-signed agreement using my mom's credit. And thanks to a lovely little tool called MyFico, which I'd helped her set up years ago when she was struggling to manage her debts, I still had access to her credit alerts. That's how I knew her score had dropped 48 points in the last month. Why? Because Nate had missed a payment, and the dealership was already threatening repossession if it happened again. The cherry on top? I requested a mail forwarding order. Any financial or legal documents related to the house would now come to my P.O. box, not Mom's address. I wasn't locking the doors. I was turning off the lights, one switch at a time. The real fun began when I reached out to the neighbors. Not all of them, just one. Ms. Kendra, a retired attorney who lived 2 doors down and had always had a soft spot for me. We got lunch. I told her, casually, about the trust, about the transition. I didn't even need to ask her to watch the house. She offered. Anything shady goes down, I'll be the first to know, she said. And I've still got friends on the HOA board, if it comes to that. Perfect. That weekend, I filed a notice of ownership review with the county assessor's office. Standard process. Legal. Boring. But it flags the property as under trust litigation, which meant any attempt by Mom or Nate to refinance, claim equity, or initiate sale. Blocked. I didn't even need a lawyer in the room. Just a notary and a $40 filing fee. And now, the real kicker. Nate's birthday was coming up. He was turning 23. Another party. Another event where Mom would no doubt try to spin the narrative. But this time, I wasn't going to crash it. No, I was going to let someone else do it for me. Remember my cousin Jen? The one who messaged me after seeing the Facebook drama? Well, Jen's younger sister, Kara, had just moved to Sacramento. And guess where she got a job? City Records. Department of Housing. She owed me a favor. I once helped her get out of a sketchy sublet situation back when I was still doing freelance contract reviews on the side. So I called in the favor. I didn't ask her to do anything illegal. I just asked her to review a few public filings to make sure everything around the property was in order. What she found? 2 things. 1, Mom had recently attempted to file a transfer of ownership intent, a poorly written, unfiled document she'd handed off to her accountant, who wasn't even certified anymore. She'd tried to sneak it into the county clerk's office a week before the barbecue. 2, the house was still technically zoned under a multi-party trust, meaning if Nate did move in full-time and tried to file as a primary resident, it would trigger a zoning violation, which meant fines. Lots of them. Kara emailed me a copy of the flag document and said, they'll probably be getting a formal notice in about 2 weeks. If they're still living there, they'll have to come in and explain. I thanked her and added that file to the growing stack I now kept neatly organized in a Dropbox folder labeled Redemption. By now, I wasn't just reacting. I was constructing. This wasn't a petty battle over a house anymore. It was a slow, methodical reclaiming of my voice, my boundaries, my worth. And I wasn't doing it alone. Uncle Dave stayed close. Jen started dropping subtle truth bombs in the family Facebook group. Stuff like, isn't it wild how we think we know what's happening with the house, but we only hear one side? Even my Aunt Sheila, Mom's older sister, texted me, saying, hey, I had no idea you paid for everything. That's not right, Sean. I'm proud of you. The tide was shifting, but I wasn't ready to flip the final card yet. Nate was about to make a mistake. A big one. I could feel it. His ego wouldn't let him go quietly, and I wanted to be there when it happened. Because sometimes revenge isn't about the knockout. Sometimes, it's about letting your opponent throw every punch until they tire themselves out swinging at a man who's already 2 steps ahead. And when that moment came, I'd be ready. Nate's 23rd birthday landed on a Saturday. Of course it did. The invitations had been trickling across social media all week. Facebook events, Instagram stories, even a short TikTok clip of Nate standing in front of the house with the caption, "New chapter starts now, #blessed #homeowner," followed by him clinking a glass of champagne with my mom on the front porch. You'd think he invented real estate. He made sure to tag all our extended family, especially the ones who'd missed the graduation party fiasco. The message was clear, look at me. I won. What he didn't know was that the clock had been ticking the moment he posted that video. And at precisely 9 a.m. on his big day, it hit 0. The first domino fell with a knock on the door. According to Ms. Kendra, who was watering her front garden at the time with her phone accidentally recording, Nate answered the door in a bathrobe, blinking against the sunlight, holding a protein shake. 2 officers from the county assessor's office handed him a thick envelope. Inside, a formal notice of zoning violation, citing the property's classification under the still active trust. The violation included a warning about non-permitted renovations, thanks to the open kitchen remodel I'd paid for, but never filed under Nate's name. and an advisory that the house was legally ineligible for full-time residential use under current documents until trust disputes were resolved. In plain English, he wasn't allowed to live there. Penalties: $500 a day starting immediately, with an audit scheduled in 10 business days. Failure to vacate could result in a court order. Nate must have called Mom in a panic because 5 minutes later, her car pulled up. She stormed into the house, didn't even glance at Kendra, who was now accidentally trimming hedges within earshot. But the fun didn't stop there. 2 hours later, 11:15 a.m., a sleek silver tow truck rolled up. Nate's Mustang was parked in the driveway, polished and posed like some kind of prize on a game show. Well, guess what? Lease default plus missed payments plus a delayed cosigner renewal equals repossession. The driver knocked politely. Nate didn't come out, so the tow guy did his job. In front of half the guests who had already arrived early to set up balloons and streamers, the Mustang was winched up and wheeled out, taillights disappearing down the street, while Nate yelled from the porch, barefoot, robe flapping in the wind. By noon, most of the guests had quietly RSVP'd via text. A few stayed behind, pretending to help set up, while obviously waiting to see what would happen next. But the real hammer? That came at 2 p.m., just as the grill was being lit. Just as Mom had pulled out a tray of those awful mini quiches she swore everyone loved. Just as Nate had put on his best "this is all fine" face and was posing with a party hat for some Instagram story captioned, "Can't kill the vibe." That's when I arrived. Not loudly, not uninvited, just calmly, in a black polo and jeans, folder under one arm, sunglasses on. People looked over, whispering. Nate froze mid-laugh. Mom saw me and actually dropped a plate. "I told you not to come," she said, eyes sharp. "I'm not here for the party," I said. "I'm here for the house." She opened her mouth, probably to make a scene, but before she could say anything, a second car pulled up behind me. My lawyer, Jameson, stepped out. Full suit. Messenger bag. He didn't say a word, just handed Mom and Nate each a copy of the legal packet I prepared over the last month. "This is an official notice of repossession and trust enforcement," I said clearly, loud enough for the guests to hear. "Effective immediately." "What the hell does that mean?" Nate asked, voice rising, face turning red. "It means," Jameson said, "you're trespassing on a trust-owned property, and you've been notified of non-compliance with zoning and legal requirements. As of this moment, you are required to vacate the premises until formal review is complete." "You can't be serious," Mom said, laughing nervously, as if that would make it go away. "Oh, I am," I said, locking eyes with her for the first time since the barbecue. "See, I've been patient. For years. I let you ignore my contributions. I let you rewrite the story. But when you tried to hand over something I built with my own hands and savings, that's when you crossed the line." Nate was fuming. "You think you can just kick me out?" "I don't think," I said. "I know. And you don't even live here legally. You're a squatter in a trust property you never contributed a dime to." Jameson pulled out one last sheet. "And here's the formal cease and desist from Sean regarding misrepresentation on social media and in public domains regarding ownership of this property. If you continue to claim otherwise, we'll proceed with a defamation and fraud case." "You're insane," Nate hissed. "Maybe," I said, turning toward the crowd. "But I'm also the guy who paid off this house, who paid the bills, who made sure Mom didn't lose it after Dad died. And I've got every single receipt." A heavy silence fell over the backyard. Mom looked like she'd swallowed glass. Nate was vibrating with rage. The guests started quietly packing up their stuff, one by one, like they were escaping a sinking ship. Aunt Sheila gave me a nod as she left. "Took you long enough," she muttered. Uncle Dave pulled up not long after, just in time to hand Jameson a set of new keys. The locksmith followed 15 minutes later. By 4 p.m., Nate and Mom were sitting on the curb in front of the house, bags beside them, all their stuff still inside. But they couldn't go back in, because I'd changed the locks. Legally, calmly, quietly. I didn't kick them out forever. I'm not a monster. But I did enforce a mandatory 30-day cooling period, during which they were barred from entering the property unless supervised, and only to retrieve belongings. I gave Mom a generous relocation stipend from the trust, something I didn't have to do. Nate got nothing. Well, not nothing. He got a new lease in a shared apartment an hour away, working part-time at a logistics startup where his fake resume didn't help him very much once they saw his actual transcripts. Mom tried texting, calling, leaving long voicemails filled with guilt and Bible quotes. But I didn't answer. I needed space. Not just from them, but from the part of me that used to let this happen. I spent the next few weeks fixing up the house. I hired contractors, finished the remodel I'd started, repainted the upstairs, replaced the worn carpet in the living room with hardwood. I didn't move in. Not yet. I just made it mine. For the first time. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about ruining someone else's life. It's about reclaiming yours. And that's exactly what I did.